watching Georgia football improve from week 1 to week 2. A little bit of groaning in the first quarter. Rusty, I see your name tonight is "It is Mike Bobo's fault." A little tongue in cheek, but I think 2 games in, we kind of have an idea of what this Georgia team is made out of, but you really won't know until South Carolina. But what we do know so far is Carson Beck's getting better. I don't know if he's making everybody feel happy about him because everyone's going to be very critical of the new quarterback replacing Stetson Bennett. But we do know this defense is pretty dang good.
Yeah, I'll start with the good stuff. The defense is they're fast, they're big, they're what we thought they were. I just kind of made a note on the board Friday or Saturday morning, I believe, that they're different with Smile Munden on the field because he adds so much speed there in the middle. He can play sideline to sideline. He can blitz the passer. All those things you kind of love out of Smile, and they're just different with him. I thought Warren Brinson played really good. I thought Warren Brinson played one of his best games. Christian Miller until he got hurt a little bit. I'll have to ask Jake Rowe about that. But Christian had a really good couple of plays there. So you see some things out of that young defensive line that you like. You got some new names there, some guys that's got to step up at some point. And you look at the offense, and I think they did start slow. And that first drive, they go right down the field and unable to punch that in, and they miss a chip shot field goal. And you're just thinking, oh man, here we go. But real strong second half. I'll get more into the offense, but I want to hear Jake's comments. But I've certainly got a few more comments as we get into the other side of my thoughts on this team right now.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of hand wringing, and obviously the 3 biggest topics of conversation are Mike Bobo, Carson Beck, and the run game. All right, and all I can do is just kind of just make a comparison to Georgia as the championship program that it is, right? They're back-to-back champions this year. They were champions last year. Well, what did we see out of last year's team? And I don't know what's going to be different when they're challenged. Okay, so let's just go ahead and put that in there. But for those that are worried, I've made this point several times, but we saw how Georgia played against Kent State, against Samford last year, even against Missouri. So I think what you kind of have to look at here is, all right, let's start with Mike Bobo. I've gone back and I've looked at the passing charts from the past 2 seasons from the first couple of games, and they are so comparable in terms of where the passes are being made. A lot of at and behind the line of scrimmage stuff, a lot of under 10-yard stuff, get it to you guys and let them move, taking your shots, down the field. Thus far, Carson Beck has been better. And listen, he hasn't played Oregon, but he's better through 2 games from 10 yards and beyond than Stetson Bennett was last year. He is more efficient. He is more successful. He's thrown for he hasn't thrown for more yards. Well, yes, actually he has. He has thrown for more yards, 10 yards and beyond. Now, has he missed some stuff? Absolutely. But you keep going back to this whole idea that a lot of folks want to just throw this, hey, he's in his 4th year at Georgia, Carson Beck is. Well, I mean, 2020 wasn't much of a year, guys. There was basically no camp. He had no spring practice, and he got in to snap and kneel on it maybe once or twice. 2021, he ends up being the 3rd quarterback, right? So, probably got a lot of scout team reps that year, if we're being honest, him and Brock Vandegrift both. So yeah, he's a little older, but starting games and having teams game plan against you and having teams put stuff in to say, hey, maybe we can confuse him. Maybe we can take what he did this last game really well and we can, go against that. That's going to take some time. And then, obviously the run game, again, going back to last year, I looked back at my notes after the Samford game, even after the South Carolina game and after the Kent State game. And it was and Missouri game as well, especially for 3 quarters. A lot of concern about the run game. Like, where's it at? You're not doing this. It's a combination of things, guys. The offensive line's not blocking real well. The perimeter blocking's not great. None of it's consistent. None of it's, awesome. But then again, you look at the tailbacks. Are they getting what's there? Are they turning, there are some times where Georgia's turning 5-6 yards into 2 or 3 yards because they're still coming together. And the left side of that offensive line, I think, cannot be overstated enough that Ernest Green is playing his first ball of his career. And he played pretty poorly yesterday. He missed got Carson Beck lit up on a touchdown pass in the red zone, and was responsible for a couple of other pressures and a couple of other blown assignments in the run game. So I tell you what I do know about Georgia football, Rusty, is that you and I talked about it on the phone yesterday. Kirby Smart was fit to be tied for that noon kickoff yesterday. He was in rare form, and that's why Georgia is where Georgia is, and that's why Kirby Smart's considered one of the best coaches in the country, is because he's crossing every T and he's dotting every I. And I don't think it's bootlicking or wild to suggest that Georgia's going to get better as this season goes along. The entire program is founded upon improvement and development, and I think you're in good hands, and I think Georgia's going to grow because these coaches know how to coach and these players are talented.
Yeah, I'm concerned, man. I'm concerned about the running game, and you got leading rusher with Rodney Robinson, 6 carries for 38 yards. You had 99 total rushing yards against Ball State, and I'm not so concerned. I do think what you're touching on, Jake, I do think you're 100% right. I think the offensive line is going to get better. I think they played a little bit better there at times against Ball State. Not really worried about that group. What I'm worried about is, do they have difference makers at running back right now? And I'll be honest with you, I don't see it. And let me give you an example of what I think without talking to anybody in that building about it. Georgia's running quick game. I mean, they are running quick game as fast as they can get. They're getting the ball out of Beck's hands into space, and they're basically using those bubbles for a handoff. And they're just trying to get the ball out to those guys in space. And it takes so long for plays to develop. It takes so long for me to see the guys getting through the hole. I think the reaction from me, from both of y'all and everyone else, when you saw Dylan Bell, I'm not saying Dylan Bell is the answer at running back, but what I'm telling you is when you watch that play, you see how fast he was in the hole. A guy was one-on-one with him. He makes a move on him. He takes to the house. And that's not going to happen every play. That's not going to happen. But what you see is the burst. And right now, I just don't see it. I see guys that are kind of hard to tackle. Roger Robinson, to me right now, might be your best. Now, listen, we haven't seen Dejan Edwards yet, and we all know that he's a different kind of dude. He's got a little juice to him as well. So you welcome him back. We felt like Branson Robinson was the number 1 running back. I thought he was, and he's gone for the year. But when I see Georgia going to quick game, I can tell you right now, that's a lot of what they ran at Colorado State with Mike Bobo because they didn't have much of a running game. And you're doing what you have with your personnel. And that the running backs have got to that room has got to get better in a hurry. And if Georgia's got bigger goals down the line, that's the one thing I can tell you, in my opinion, is not calling, it's not play calling, it's not scheme. It's sometimes there's one unblocked person, and you're counting on that back to make that person miss, and they're not making people miss many tackles right now. And I just, I'm sure that Kirby Smart and those guys know that, and they're going to challenge those backs, and they're all highly recruited players now. This isn't like Georgia just went out on a limb with these guys. These are highly recruited players they've got. So, Jake, I think you hit it right on the head. These are great coaches. And you know what? You get paid a lot of money. So your best players right now are on the outside, on the edge, and you got to find a way to make those guys win games. And, oh, by the way, Lab McConkey still hasn't played. I don't know. Jake, you and I both hear things every day with that deal. And for whatever reason, he hasn't played yet. So that kind of is a little bit worrisome. But when Lab McConkey gets back in this lineup, he is a guy that can stress you as a defense too, because he's so quick and he's so fast in short area. I can't wait to see him in this offense because Mike Bobo is going to give Lad McConkey a ton of touches, and he's going to get a lot of those. And listen, Mekhi Muse, you got to find packages for him because he's making things. To my example, when we talk about explosive and making people miss, watch how many people miss tackles or he runs by them. And that's the thing right now. Georgia, I think, is lacking in a running back room. You know, I know everybody wants to jump to Dylan Bell. Let's throw him back there. I think that Dylan Bell run showed you what we're used to at Georgia. And right now, I just don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like what we said coming into the season. Is there going to be a stable of guys that are confident with what they're doing, whether it's because of experience, because of their health? And right now, I mean, who's to say that's not lending itself to this situation at the running back position? Once again, though, Mekhi Muse proving that Georgia is walk-on you. I mean, sub 6 foot players are the cornerstone of Georgia's football dynasty right now. That guy is a maniac. Ro, what were you about to say?
He's sub 5.5 feet.
Yeah,
I think Mekhi Muse might be 5'5", man. One thing I do want to point out too is, you know, Rusty, you brought it up, Dejan Edwards returning. I don't care who I don't care who was going to be available, even if Branson Robinson was available, who I think was Georgia's most talented back. Even Kenny McIntosh. If you go back to last year, there's nobody on Georgia's roster better at being productive in the ground game than Day. He rarely gets tackled for a loss. He's always kind of finding the crease, and I feel like he's the guy that, you know, when the offensive line has it blocked for 2 or 3, he picks up 5 or 6, and when they've got it blocked for 6 or 7, he's the guy that can get you 12 to 15. Now, is he going to go just running by everybody in the secondary? Nah, he does. You talk about not having that extra gear. You know, he's probably a 4.7, 4.8 guy. But, you know, we know Elijah Holyfield was that and saw him run for 1,000 yards. One of the things that Rusty, that I do have to say about the run game, though, is if you'd have told me back in March, hey, you know, to start the season, Georgia's going to have probably it's not going to have any of its best 3 tailbacks healthy 100%, and then 2 of them aren't going to play at all for the first 2 games, I'd have probably told you the run game was probably going to look a little shoddy. But you know, losing Branson Robinson sucks, and you made the point on the day it happened, and then it kind of was a light bulb moment for me too. You just lost your most talented running back for the year, and that's just going to suck. And now you got to figure it out. You got to put Brock Bowers back there and throw him a screen. Which was set up for a big play had Brock Bowers not done what he never does and drop passes.
Yep.
You know, so you got Dylan Bell back there. You may see Mekhi Muse line up back there at some point. You know, Andrew Paul at some point, Rusty. We heard the same things on him.
That's the one I'm interested in, Andrew Paul.
Me too.
He looks to me like he's got a little bit more juice. And I think back today, I'm thinking, okay, why would you not play him as much? And the only thing, Jake, you know more X and O's than me. You know you got to be able to protect the quarterback. And if you're not available, if you can't pick up that part yet, it takes a little more time to get in there. People don't realize this is really his first fall on the field. So, and he's also in a new offense with Mike Bobo. And one thing I can tell you, if you can't pass pro, you're not playing right now because you got to protect the quarterback, some of those things. So maybe – and that's just a hunch, maybe. But I'm interested in seeing Andrew Paul because I think he's got a little bit more juice to him just seeing him with the ball.
Well, I think Kirby said in fall camp, right, or even when he got hurt, maybe it was in the spring, I can't remember, that with his injury, you know, you're still looking at him partially recovering, so maybe he's on some sort of pitch count as well.
Could be.
But I guess the good news there is everything we just said, with Dejan coming back, guys getting healthier, you're kind of on this boat ramp down into the water. Each week gets a little bit easier, and maybe the running backs put it together and start to be a little bit more violent out there as the season goes on. What have we heard on Javon Bullard and Kristen Miller?
That's being real picky. Let me finish that subject. That's being real picky on Georgia. But I know the standards here, and I know what they've had at running back and those type of things. A lot of people on the board, a lot of people in the comments saying Dylan Bell. I can assure you, they're going to have some packages for Dylan Bell. He's just different back there. He's 200 pounds, 205 pounds. So, yes, I don't think that was a one and done by any means, but they're not going to sit here back there and have him run the ball 25 times. That's not going to happen either. But Dylan Bell makes you better. If he touches it 5 to 6 to 7 times in the backfield, I can only imagine they showed that play. And you don't think South Carolina's putting in extra work for Dylan Bell this week? It causes you extra stress to prepare for a team.
Well, hey, I want to point something out real quick because it just kind of hit me in the head when I was thinking about it. You know what Kenny McIntosh did in Georgia's first 3 ball games? Well, we can count the first 4 ball games last year. If I'm doing the math correctly, Kenny McIntosh had a grand total. He finished the season with 825 rushing yards. But after 4 games last year, I'm looking at this right now, and I'm seeing 97 yards rushing on about 26 carries. So, 25 carries. So 25 carries for 97 yards rushing in Georgia's first 3 games last year. It took a little while for that thing to get, you look at a couple of those games, Brock Bowers was the leading rusher in one of them because he broke off a 75-yard run. I think Georgia's going to figure it out. I do think they're going to figure it out. And I think Dejon Edwards is kind of like, he's kind of a massive puzzle piece to this whole thing because, again, first and second down, being productive, that's something where Georgia's struggling right now. They're running the ball terribly on second down.
They're missing Darnell Washington.
Yeah, they're missing him too, for sure. The guy that's out there pancaking Joey Bosa or Nick Bosa today.
Let me just tell you, there's not a Darnell Washington in the building.
No.
And there's not a 6'7", 280-pound. Oh, by the way, that's an offensive tackle that's running routes. So
yeah,
you're missing that dude, man. That's something that's not talked about enough.
Jake, do you have an update on Javon Bullard and or Kristen Miller?
As far as what I've heard on Christian Miller, I think there's a good chance he's good to go. I'm not optimistic about Javon Bullard, not this week. I haven't heard anything about it being a high ankle sprain, but I think he sprained it pretty good. It's a good thing that he was down there standing outside of the offensive or defensive huddle talking to Ron Corson, after it happened. But he's going to have to respond extremely well to treatment before he's ready to come back for South Carolina. And I think that's a little bit of a long shot. But as of right now, I think Kristen Miller's going to be okay.